Well, it's race week again.
It's right. Back to back. Welcome aboard. Today is April 13th, 2021. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We are episode 469.
Okay.
Did I nail it?
I think it's 68.
Oh, come on, give me a break.
Let me look back at my notepad.
We'll say
468.
468. All right, jumping a little bit ahead. Hope you had an awesome week. But yes, racing is back. We'll be doing. Man, it's exciting. I'll get into that here in a little bit. But if it's your first time tuning in, we appreciate you joining us. I know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So thanks for giving us your time. We've been doing this podcast for going on 5 years now. We got 467 in the archives. Mike does an awesome job of outlining those. You can pick and choose and listen to the one that you think is right for you on the day. You can listen to them in order, do whatever you want to, but just enjoy them. Consume them as you wish. We cover all things triathlon, and we cover a whole lot of life. We'll do a swim, bike, run, in-depth podcasts on training philosophy and outline. We'll do race recaps, like we will today. We'll do race previews, like we did last week, and more of those to come. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're both going through. Personally, a lot of times what our athletes are going through. Oftentimes we'll pop into our Facebook group, which is called Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. Answer one simple question, we'll let you in. A lot of awesome people in there, and I can imagine that the chatter is going to be heightened here over the next few months as races continue to kick off, and a lot of awesome people in there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, post away. You got everything from beginners and athletes who haven't participated in a triathlon yet to Ironman champions and everyone in between. So feel free to be part of that community. A lot of awesome people in there. Mike and I, we're not experts. We're not hacks. We're definitely not hacks. We're not experts or professionals. We're just like you. We're experienced and wise in our old age. We're just still trying to figure things out. And that's what we do. Just gotta have our discussions. We have no sponsors, no ads, but one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Hang on a minute. I forgot to start my Garmin.
Oh, my God. Stop.
Now, happy, healthy, strong, and here we are, man.
Did you miss me while I was gone?
I did miss you.
You're not going to get emotional like you did last week, are you?
No, I'm not going to do that because
good
I was off on my own having a.
I was going to say you weren't just sitting here twiddling your thumb at the hub. Miss me. You're off doing your own thing, which is awesome. And
I was up in Nashville. Got back on the trace. Rode at the
lab.
Can't wait to see it
again in June. Again, we'll see the lab in June at one of our camps. How was the lab? Crowded?
Yeah.
Drones, rollerblades, wedding photography, kites.
It's a little dicey, man.
Yeah.
It was it was a weekend. Wait, what? Sunday. So.
Bad day to go.
Yeah, it was a bad day to go. But it was windy.
Tolerable? It's always windy.
I mean, it was out there. And let me tell you, that town is hopping. Nashville is back. If you're thinking about taking a little trip up there to the whatever the heck that is downtown,
go for it.
It is.
You won't find me there.
On fire.
It's on fire. Things are back.
4:30 in the afternoon. It was just full on.
Lights
on
out.
Saturday.
And speaking of back, ladies and gentlemen, 2021 races are back.
I'm feeling it. You're feeling good about it.
I have been. I felt good about it last week and the week before. I know that. And let's be honest. Again, like if it's your first time tuning in or you skipped last week or whatever, like I was down at Texas 70.3. We had athletes racing. I was looking to race. We'll go into that later on in the podcast. But it kind of felt like a quiet restart, of the season. And I get it, because we had Ironman Florida last year in November, and then things have pretty much been canceled after that. You had our Arizona 70.3, which happened in October, and then it's kind of everybody's been kind of hesitating. I think what put the real kibosh on things was when Ironman Texas canceled, and they were like, "Oh, here we go. Here's just the first one to go for the season." And we said when we did that podcast, don't let that deter you from getting excited about races, because I believe that was a one-off. And we were down in Galveston this weekend, and it was, I'll go into the full race recap here in a minute, just in the event and the whole thing. I think people are probably interested to see what racing is going to look like, what racing is going to feel like. But you got Florida 70.3 happening this weekend in Haines City. That's going to go. You've got St. George 70.3 the first week in May. That's going to go. You got Gulf Coast 70.3 the Mother's Day weekend for the second or third weekend of May. That's going to happen. Chattanooga, from what I understand, it's back, baby. Racing is back. And I think this weekend felt like a very quiet, uprising of hey, we spent a year and a half being like, where are the races? Like, why aren't we doing this? Everything's getting canceled. And then now races are kind of happening, and here they go. And it just seemed very quiet. And I don't think Ironman did a pretty good job promoting it, but I think we're all kind of, it's kind of like crying wolf. You know, it's like seen it, heard it, still got canceled, not excited yet. You know, it's like, so I think people are kind of, in a way, they're kind of jaded in terms of like, let me see a couple roll, right? Let me see how things go. And you had a lot of athletes that I've spoken to last year, like, you know, I don't care when racing comes back. I just want to look and feel like it did. And I can tell you that outside of like maybe one or two things, it felt like a totally normal race. Like there were, yes, Ironman said no spectators allowed. I can tell you this, there were spectators. There were plenty of them. There were just as many, if not more, than I feel like there were back when we did it, or when I did it and you and I traveled there 3 years ago. I think the three biggest outliers, or the three biggest things that changed, obviously you had to wear a mask inside like the Ironman Village, but they had expos, they had vendors. You'll do like let me just start from the beginning. Like I think that's probably what you think would be helpful. Like start from the very beginning of how the race check-in procedure kind of unfolded. I think people are interested to see, like, yeah, I will say, I hope they continue to do athlete check-in and bike check-in the same way. Like, I hope they never change it. I know that you probably don't, because I think you like the huge crowds and like all the people. But for me, I like to get in and out and gone. And so what happens is, like, when you'll get like, so let's say you're getting ready to do Florida 70.3 this weekend in Haines City. What they'll do in the week or two prior is you will basically go into your active.com account and you will pick a check-in time. You can,
I'm already gone.
You're already gone. You can pick well, I mean, you won't be on time for it anyway.
You do that
like
on
Mike
site?
Chirali, they're like, you were supposed to show up 2 days ago. And you're like, what, it's race morning. I can't check in.
2,599.
Yeah. So you pick your check-in time. You could pick a Friday or Saturday, which I thought was awesome because, you know, check-in the day before. I was like, I picked the early morning slots. You pick that. Then when you go to check-in, you present the QR code, which is, again, you're already out. You have to present the QR code that you got when you registered for your check-in time on your phone. Oh, they'll scan it. And then I was probably in and out of check-in in 2.5 minutes. It was lightning quick. It was extremely efficient. They knew what they were doing. It was fast. It was easy. And then right at the end of the of checkout, right before you got your timing chip and your swag, you got to pick your bike check-in time, which I honestly, I kind of assumed like there was a lot of check-in times on Friday. I chose to do like check-in early Saturday morning. I figured a lot of people would probably check in Friday, but they didn't. Every single time slot was open for bike check-in. I chose to check my bike in later. They give you like a little sheet of paper. It's like you check in your bike time between 3 and 4, which is the time that I picked. I think later is always better, just because, especially on a windy race, like Galveston is a windy race. Like you don't want, if you're using deep dish wheels especially, you don't want to let your bike just kind of sway in the wind on a very light rack with no other bikes on it, because that's what's happening. There was very high winds that day, but you pick the bike check-in, then you walk out and you leave. They had the Ironman store open. It was fantastic. It was like, this is my jam. Like I can, yeah. Which you and I are polar opposites in that. You like to wander, you like to see people, you like to shake hands, you like to kiss babies.
I like to check in like I like to work out sometimes. I like to do it when I
want.
When
I feel
when
like
you want, when you feel
like it.
I'm going to go check in right now. And I agree with that. I mean, sometimes even on the, we talk about checking in late when it's real hot for the tires.
Yep. Yeah. And so you always kind of want to, figure out like, what's best for you. But I think that, hey, pick a time, go with it. And I can't imagine that if you're late or you're early, they're not going to be like, oh, you can't check in right now. I'm sure I think what they say is like, we really encourage you to check in during this time. And that was pretty much it. Like you checked your bike in, they looked at your time, you walked in, you did it, and then it was over. It felt very, obviously the only other thing that was obvious is like you had to wear, they give you an Ironman logoed mask, or you can obviously wear whatever you want to in there. That's required to be in and around the area. Other than that, like they were like, hey, show up race morning. And I got to say this, I enjoyed the transition. I guess it did close. Like basically what they said was the next day, like 5 a.m. transition opens, and then they didn't leave like a close time, right? Like they had like 6:45 was the alleged close time, but you basically stood there until. So what happens is for the swim wave. So Galveston, what they basically did was they came in through the middle of transition. in lines. They basically they started off with a 25. So if you're racing, you're trying to anticipate how the waves will go. Like this, the very earliest wave, this fastest wave they did was 25 to 27 minute wave was the fastest. Then it was 27 to 28 to 30, and then so on and so on. So you grab that and you basically just follow the person who's got that corral, all the way to the swim start. Like, and they do it in order, and you just kind of line up. And then I think from what I understood, people had kind of moved all the way out of transition by 6:45. I think that caught some people off guard, but if they want to get 2,000 people in the water between the first age group and the clear transition so the pros can come in, they got to move us kind of quickly. I do have to say that I feel that Galveston was uniquely set up to have a very efficient swim start. Like, they said they wanted you spread out, 6 feet. They had red tape in the ground. Nobody spread out. We were packed in there like sardines. Like, we were ready. We were ready to roll. You got behind your sign. People were antsy. People were excited. And so we walked through there, but they had a very similar setup to what Louisville had, in that they had the old, the Louisville, where they had like they utilized the entire greenway right there as like your line. Well, they used like the sidewalk and the path all the way leading up to it. And then they had 3 different, they called them a pier. They're not piers. They're like mini docks. Like, there is no jumping in.
It looked like it wasn't the same pier, right?
No, it was not.
Okay.
They had that, but what they had done is they looked like they had built because it was like, when we did it, we jumped in like, I would say like 10 feet into the water. Like, it was a decent jump. Well, these, if you ever did Ironman Louisville, no matter what year it was, you walk down and then you kind of go down like a ramp, and then they have like 3 separate little mini docks, like they're kind of short and skinny. They kind of, go out into the water. And then they had timing mats at the very end of those. And so they got to kind of put people through 3 different ways to jump in the water. And they were letting in 3 people in every, I think, 2 or 3 seconds. There's a beeping sound that would go off. It would kind of tell you when you can go in, but your time doesn't start until you cross that final mat. And then you get in the water. I thought it was incredibly efficient. I was stunned that so I ended up in the early wave, which is like right around 7:00. And I think I got in the water around 7:01. I swam around 30 minutes. I was out of the water at 7:31, 7:32. I was stunned that everyone was gone out of transition. They had moved everyone through. I was surprised they got everyone into the water that quickly. I think, again, they were uniquely set up because they had the 3 different kind of, whether they built it or it was planned, that way, or they just got lucky, having 3 different areas, not just kind of one chute to send 3 people side by side off, everyone. So that helped, but I was impressed that they got everyone in that quickly. It seemed to go off very seamlessly. I'm sure we could find, ways to complain about things here and there, but overall I thought up until that point it was flawless. I thought it was flawless. It was seamless. It felt like a normal race, especially once you got into, maybe not in transition. I thought I do have to say, and I think you will like this, is that there was no rush to leave transition. Like, everyone was kind of like hanging out. Corey? We got to sit. They had tons of porta-johns, which I also thought was fantastic. There was no lines to wait for anything. You just kind of sat there by your bike and you get to chat. And I think what they do for a lot of races now is they put you together. Unless you're an AWA or a pro, obviously, if you sign up as a team, they try to put you together as a team, which I thought was really neat. So there were a couple of us just kind of hanging out and chit chatting, doing things, which I think it's fun to be racked by people and your friends. We just kind of sit and joked around and relaxed, and I really enjoyed that part of not feeling like you had to get into transition and rush and find your way to some start and find your way to this. That part made me feel more relaxed. And I think that will honestly be helpful with other people, maybe first timers, not feeling that anxiety of I got to get in transition super early, and I got to get in, then I got to get out, I got to find my way to the swim start. I thought it was because
then you rush out and you don't start for another half hour, 45 minutes anyway.
Exactly. And then people got their wetsuits on an hour before, supposed to get in the water. So it did. I enjoyed that part. It felt very relaxing in terms of just the lead up until, right until the moment you hop in the water.
I mean, it sort of brings up a good question as to why they always rush you out of transition in the first place. I can't remember what that reason is. And I like that a lot because I'm notoriously a little bit later getting to transition, and then you kind of hear those people start to yell 15 minutes, and then it's sort of like this, it kind of does get in your head a little bit. It's sort of you feel like it's almost like that's a race start in its own right, in a way. You know, you're kind of panicking in, and then you got to get, you know, the pump thing, and then something goes wrong, and you got to run over to have somebody help you out or whatever. And it's just like a time, but hopefully it does stay like that. That would be kind of cool, actually. I don't know why.
I really enjoy it because
why did they do it? Why did they kick you out of there? What was it?
Listen, people will say, well, they kicked us out of transition at 6:45. Well, the male pros went in the water at 6:30. So they were getting out at 6:50. So what I would imagine they didn't want.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was the only Ironman. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to have plenty of time. I actually loved it. I was thinking like, man, this was like our bigger team race, like Chattanooga, or like you and I racked next to each other or something, like just sitting around
play
shooting
a little hacky
shit.
sack.
Exactly, a little hacky sack, maybe a couple rounds of spades, like just relaxing. Like, it was just a very relaxing environment. So I think, especially for beginners, like, you know, you'll probably hope it stays that way because it was a cool like vibe. Nobody was in a rush, and nobody was in a rush to go somewhere. People weren't freaking out about bike pumps. Like there was just. It was it was actually really fun just to kind of like sit back and like, we got nowhere to go. This is kind of nice, like that type of rush. And where am I gonna put my bag? And there was plenty of space. You know, you didn't have like 6 feet per rack. So if you're thinking like, oh, well, they're gonna spread everybody out, no, they're not. You're racked just like normal. Because they want as many people to race now as possible, because they want you to move through your races, move through your deferrals, and move through whatever you need to. So now you can start signing up for new races and spending more money. The day itself, like, you know, we had 7 other athletes racing. I was looking to race as well and did. And the course is always windy, like we talked about it, you know, in the preview race. Like people think that races that are flat are easy. Usually by like just simple fact of like the location of being flat, they are usually going to be like very difficult in other ways. Like the swim, when I turned the corner, I hadn't seen the water. When I turned the corner and saw it, I thought, you got what you wish for, because the swim wasn't a disaster, but it looked rough. Like I thought this looks unsettling, and how I knew it was unsettling is I was up in a wave that's probably a little bit faster than my current fitness level. There was a lot of nervous chit chat, like around, like, because usually the swimmers in the front, they're just kind of relaxed and joke around. There was a lot of nervous chatter about, all right, so man, it's kind of been a long time since I've swam in the ocean. Like, you know, it's kind of one of those things, and I feel like. And I said this in my weekly check-in. Like, I feel very fortunate that, like, I feel at home. Like, I feel more at home in the water than I do on land in a lot of ways. I was like, just keep me in that water. Like, I wasn't nervous at all. I wasn't panicking. I was like, let me get in that water. But it was rough. I will say it's probably one of the top 2 or 3 roughest swims I've ever been a part of.
Would you compare it more to like a lake rough?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a great example. Like, the only other really rougher one I could probably compare it to was like the 3rd triathlon I ever did, which was the Kiowa Island triathlon. The one I think I've shared the story that I was in really great swim shape back then, but I thought I was last coming out of the water because the swells were so huge you couldn't see any other swimmers. But that one, and then this one, it was a difficult, like you sight out at a weird angle and then you take a left and you come back, so you're with the current. But it was just one of those where you never kind of got in a good groove for the most part, which is a hard swim for people, I think, because you never feel kind of like you're going smooth. But again, I hopped in the 25-27 minute crowd, which is, again, a little bit faster than what I knew I was probably capable of swimming on the day. I thought around 30 minutes was probably honestly going to be a great swim for me, given that I honestly had been a little bit lax in my swim training. But I wanted just to get in the water and go. I wanted to get on the run course as soon as I could, like before, because it's a 3-loop course, so the least amount of congestion possible. And then hopped in the water and went. And the way out was just like we referenced on the podcast preview, which was like it was against the current. It felt like it took a hot minute to get to that first turn buoy. Like it was like you looked up and you're like, another yellow. Where's that freaking red turn buoy? Like, it took a minute, but it was one of those which I think is hard, you know, given there is no swim warm up, which is a giant pet peeve of mine. You're just jumping in the water cold, like with jumping into an ocean to race hard out of the gate, not with a current, but like against a current, and you have to go. So you went from relaxed in your wetsuit to jumping in the water and going. There was no like in water start. It was like you jumped off and you were going, like your time was started. So you got to get rolling. Once I made the corner, I knew we kind of have a little bit of current behind you, but you were still getting chopped, like you were still getting hit in the face every once in a while. What I usually do when I swim is if I'm getting chop, I'll breathe behind me. Like, I'll turn my breath and like kind of look back towards my feet to kind of shield my face. I found some good feet to go on, but I could tell, like, you could even see in my wave that some of the jet skis and the boats were moving. I talked to other athletes, and I think there were quite a few people pulled from the water, because you saw jet skis and boats going like all day long. Because as soon as you'd get some clear water, you're like, what are you doing? Like, why are you creating more wake? Like, we don't need more wake. We want some smooth water. I found some really good feet to hop on, and then honestly was just cruising. Like, I felt like I got about halfway. I wasn't wearing a watch, so I didn't know what my time was going to be. I knew the buoys transitioned from, I think, yellow to orange on the straightaway, and totally honest, I ended up obviously pulling off the bike, having some major stomach issues and throwing up. But I took which is not the cardinal sin, but like, when you're in conditions like that, you can't really take a break, right? You can't take a mental break in terms of, you have to be engaged. You can't. It's not like you're swimming in a pool or you're swimming in a river that's got a current. You just never know. Like, you can't predict sea chop, right? You just can't. Like, you can think you're taking a smooth breath. I had some really awesome feet that I was following, so I didn't have to sight buoys. I was just sighting the swim cap in front of me, because it was a young lady and she was sighting incredibly well. And I started to think about the bike, and I'm like, here in the swim, which it's nothing wrong with that. And I took 2 lazy breaths, in terms of, like, I didn't look back. I just kind of like went to take a normal, like, hey, I'm in the pool and I'm comfortable breath, and I ended up taking in like a pretty solid amount of salt water, which I have done before. Like, I don't think you can get in some rough saltwater swims and not take in a little bit of water, because you just can't. No matter what side you're breathing on, you're gonna take some in. This is way more. And I remember I was like, God, you idiots, stay. So I told myself, stay focused. Like, you can't get lazy. Ended up veering off, and from the person I was following, to kind of re-engage myself, because I think when you follow feet, you can also get a little bit lazy, because you're not fully in. All you got to do is dial in like the little feet in front of you and like the swim cap, and like, it's hard to see also if you're following a person in front of you, even though if you think they're good feet to follow with the right pace and they're swimming straight, if you want to sight, you now have to sight over the splash of a kick, the swim cap, to look forward to another colored buoy. Okay, so I do want to say this, like, this, I don't say this is a pet peeve, but I would highly encourage, and I get that by the nature of kayaks, they are more than likely going to be yellow or red, so they're easily to see. It makes it so much harder to sight when you've got orange and yellow buoys and red buoys, and you also have a sea of orange and yellow kayaks. Like, the time I remember the most was in, like, we did Ohio 70.3, and it was like the freaking Spanish Armada of kayaks that was out there. It was like, you didn't even know what was a buoy, what was a kayak. But I finished the swim feeling really, really good, made the turn. And I think it was probably the best swim I had in me. It's the straightest I've ever swam in any race, probably. I'll occasionally.
Thank you, young lady.
She did well. I ended up leaving her because I think I just got distracted, but it was the straightest I ever swam. Ever. And usually, like, I'll come in, you come in too tight, you have to go around a buoy. But there was 3 buoys where I didn't take a stroke with my left arm, because I was so close to the buoy. I was like, there's no point. Like, you're gonna take a stroke, you're gonna hit the buoy. Swam straight, came in the water in just over 30 minutes, which to me, like, as I was kind of like grading the scale of like what would have been awesome, like 28 to 30 minutes would have been like an unreal swim. And then 30 to 32 would have been a very good swim. And I think, given the rough nature of the day, like, I was very happy to come out in that ballpark. And I know, looking at others, sometimes they were a lot slower. I think the back of the pack female pros were in the 28 to 34 minute range. The males were a little bit slower than they normally were. It was a tough swim. But all in all, I was very happy with it. But I think if anybody swam there, like, I was talking to one of our athletes, Jay Young, who's a very accomplished swimmer, he swam here in Grubby. He was like, dude, that was a hard swim. It was not a. And so if you think back at, like, how many people have had restrictions on swimming and doing things, like, I would have to imagine that, it was, hey, if you made it through that swim, good on you, because it was not an easy swim, and you probably won't see another one like that. Because I would say it was just a couple of degrees below what, some races would have been like, let's just not have the swim today. Like, it wasn't white cap, but it was just rough, and it was hard to find a groove. But all in all, again, you come out of transition, you come out of the water. I will say this, like, there's no wetsuit strippers, and probably won't be for any races this year. So if you're uncomfortable or uncertain on how quickly to get off your wetsuit, practice, because it takes people a hot minute to get their wetsuit off. I always tell people if you're taking your wetsuit off, the inside of it, you can rip and tear and pull however you want to because it's protected. It's the outside you want to be careful with. But the transition, again, was no longer than it's been before. The exact same transition area. So, I thought the transition might take a little bit longer. Same time. I think my transition this year was probably faster than it was 3 years ago. But that's what I was,
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fast. I was pretty whoa. Before we move on, can we talk 1 second about...
No.
Okay, it's over.
That's okay.
Because that swim, it sounds like it reminds me of how I felt at Wisconsin, at least that chop, and I think what happens is, at least with me, is that, you this idea of staying on all the time. I mean, it seems like ridiculous to think that you could stay on throughout a whole Ironman, but I've talked about before, like when you're trail running and all of a sudden you start dreaming about dinner,
boom,
that's when you hit a rock. You know, it's like, so it's not so much, but I don't want to say that I'm like focused all the time when I'm running or whatever, but there has to be like that drift is the thing you have to control, because it does seem like that whenever you let your mind wander, that's when something happens. So
you're on the bike and you don't have to make any turns, and all of a sudden you look up and you hit a pothole, that you could have easily avoided, or a cone. I don't know that you have to be, it's a great point. I don't know that you have to be dialed in the entire time, but you have to be present and aware. And I think that's difficult, and I think in a way it was kind of interesting because I guess most people probably were hyper aware in that situation because it was so rough, and it was what I would say was like a fairly difficult swim. And I just kind of felt myself being like, I'm just kind of like out for a stroll, like in the
but that's
in the
what
park,
I was getting at.
It's like, but you can't. That's when you fall prey to your own level of focus. Is like when you think things are comfortable, you think things are cruising. That's when you're going downhill on a bike and you're not pedaling and you're talking to a buddy, and all of a sudden go head over with a turtle or something. Like something happens. Like it's always when you're the most calm, right, and the most relaxed. Honestly, when mistakes happen, it's not when you're hyper focused on what can happen next and how am I going to take this next stroke and where is this buoy and where's it going. It's when you're just like, oh, I feel so good right now that I can probably start thinking about the bike, how I'm going to pace and how I'm going to, I was going through like where my transition, I was under W10 was like the sign of the pole. I had to run past that, take a right, know where my bike was. I was kind of going through that like mentally, like, all right, get out of transition, wetsuit, bam, 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 bam. And I was like, yeah, that was, you got to focus. I'm like, focus and stay in, if you want to think about that, think about it the last, 250, 300 meters when you're swimming straight into shore and you're not catching any chop. So that was interesting. I also say, like, these aren't huge mistakes, but like not having a practice swim is also problematic, because usually when you sight it, I never sight off the buoys ever. I always sight off the swim arch, because that's like, oh, you're going to swim through there, so why not sight off the swim arch? Well, at Texas 70.3, you actually come in a little bit to the left of it. Which I was swimming straight on for that, just kind of like happenstance, but I kept like veering myself to the right, be like, all right, you got to swim through the chute. And the closer I got, I was like, oh, yeah, they have like the black inflatables that kind of make your own little finishing chute. Hopped out of the water. Everybody was complaining before the race. It's like, oh, you got to have, your shoes on. There's going to be muscle beds and things. Like, it was fine. Swim up to the front, get out, run to your bike, and get ready to get to work.
Okay.
Transition seamless again, like going through, like if you want this to feel like a race, it was the same. Like everything felt the same. Transition felt the same. Like there were no wetsuit strippers, but big deal. Got to my bike, got my stuff on, helmet on, bam, ran into again Jay Young, who was an athlete that I work with. We got out of the water almost like the exact same time. He had a couple of choice expletive words for me coming out of transition, because we came out of the water together, and then I watched him right off into the sunset. I knew the bike was going to be windy. Again, like we referenced this in the previous podcast, it was just like I thought it would be, and just like it was 3 years ago. It was tailwind out, headwind back. And I think people were already, and I'll get to this about what I saw on the run, but I think it was evident on the run that I saw that the swim and the bike took its toll on athletes. I think people were already in a bigger energy deficit than they had anticipated coming out of the water, compared to what they probably usually had. Hopped on my bike, and 100% rookie mistake coming at you right here. So I was using like the X Lab torpedo mount, or torpedo bottle, like for my. I've used it before, I've used it in the past, but it was a brand new bottle that I was going to use for November. I just hadn't looked at it. It's like it's a bottle with a straw and like whatever, like it's clear, big deal. Got on there, hopped on my bike, was going to take my first, I always try to take in some like Cliff Blocks or some nutrition like really, really quick to get on there, especially in the first couple turns. You're not going to be an aero smash. You're going to be kind of in and out of your bars. So I went down and take a sip. You know what I got?
Air.
Plastic.
Oh.
The nipple of it where you get your fluids out of was clear, taped shut with plastic. I went to take a big gulp and I got nothing. And so I was like, mother of pearl. I was like, so do you pull over? No, you better start fumbling with this and hope you got enough nail left to, so I ended up cruising for a little bit and going in and out of turns, using my fingernail to pick at the plastic and to get it to come off. And then, sue me, but I littered. I don't know where that piece of plastic was, but it's somewhere on the course. But that was it. After that, I was like, hey, I felt pretty good. The only other kind of negative was that I had specifically planned on using a heart rate as a pretty solid guide for me on the way out and the way back. No heart rate. It didn't pick up at all on my head unit. But I was like, whatever. I knew what Watson needed to roll, so I was like, yeah, big deal. Just go with what you know. And went out. It was you knew as soon as you got out onto the seawall that it was going to be a fast out, but oh boy, was it going to be a painful return. And it was that. It was even when I got up to, before I got to maybe like 10 or 15 minutes before I got to the turnout, you saw the pros coming back in. Usually you see that when you see the pros, they are screaming, like they're flying. You even know who it is. You could see each and every one of them and who it was. They were just tucked in, going small. I think it was fascinating to watch like the drop in miles per hour on the way in and way out, on the way outbound, and then the return trip for the pros. I ended up, I'll make that short and sweet. I ended up having some major stomach issues. I couldn't hold any fluids down. I ended up throwing up 3 times on the way out. I ended up calling it a day. I think I pushed like 25 watts less on the way out than I wanted to. And still had a pretty decent outbound trip like pretty much everybody else did. Made the return trip back, and after some hard consideration, decided to pull out of the race because I was not able to keep any fluids down at all, period. Was starting to get dizzy, and at that point, honestly thought I was gonna do a danger to myself, not being fully fueled and in those wind conditions. And I will say this too, from a wheel choice standpoint, people say, oh, dude, don't ride a disc wheel in the wind. It's not the disc wheel that you need to worry about. In fact, most people would say a disc wheel is better in the wind than a 1080 or an 808 because it's flat and it's solid. There is no, you're not going to get much twitch out of it because it's going to be constant pressure against it. It's the front wheel you have to worry about. But again, if you're in a headwind, it's the same. Like you don't have to worry about the crosswinds that much. But I definitely didn't feel good. Ended up pulling out of the race around mile 32 or 35, maybe. I haven't even looked at my bike computer yet. Obviously super frustrated. I felt really, 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 really good in the morning in this race and getting out of the swim and on the bike leg. I felt really happy with my lead up, which is the saving grace, like the positive. Like I was happy with my preparation and like how I felt going in. I felt like I nailed my taper. I felt really good, which is also makes it super frustrating to make that decision. I still feel like it was the right decision, even though it was frustrating. But that's all I'm going to say about that because I want to talk about the rest of the race and like the race itself, unless you have a question.
I do have a question.
Cool.
In lieu of what happened and how it panned out for you, have you talked to anybody or like figured out anything about, because I don't think that's that uncommon to swallow a lot of salt water. And if that were in fact the reason or the main reason behind it, have you kind of like investigated, is there like an adrenaline shot of sorts that can kind of solve that problem? Or I've talked to a lot of athletes since then that have had the same thing happen. Mm-hmm. Where they've swallowed salt water before, no problem. Right. Like, an athlete that I work with in Florida is in 470.3. He was like, I take in salt water all the time. He was like, but
because you swim in the ocean, you're gonna take in salt water, but could it have been something in, the gulp that you took, that didn't settle very well. It's not just the salt water. It could have been just what was in it. It could have, the water's fine. It's not the cleanest, most pristine.
Right.
But who knows, but I think I probably should have gone just straight water for a little bit and kind of,
because of the dehydration.
It was
right?
It was early. Yeah. I mean, it was early. Like
it's hard to take that.
It was a hard managing of like where I was mentally. It was like, all right, you need calories. Like you have to, because I was thinking about the runs. Like, so you need these calories on the bike. Like you don't want to start chugging calories late on the bike into the tailwind. In hindsight, could I have probably chilled out a little bit and just done more water and more solids? Probably. But yeah, that's the thing. Like you never know, but yeah, I've troubleshooted it a lot. I think that was the culprit. Even though I'm for real never having salmon again ever the night before. That was just a total blunder. It wasn't.
Where'd that come from?
I don't know. It was just a gross error.
Let's see.
I should have gone with the ribeye like I normally do. I'm disappointed in myself as a human. It wasn't even
I'll have
good.
the salmon.
I'll have the. I was like, it was such a weak moment of.
You have that 2 days before. Because then you get the fish thing going in your body.
Yeah,
it's like I can handle the water.
Yeah, so I think that was something, and I don't know. Like I felt great going into it. I don't think it obviously wasn't anything I ate. It wasn't a stomach bug. I think it was just something I got from that gulp. Just one of those unfortunate, frustrating, the things about it, and.
Was it sloshy?
The water or my stomach?
Stomach.
Nah.
You didn't have that.
It was like a backboard. It was like you went in and came back out. It was just like, we're not having this. It was like, we're closed for business. And I was like, no, you're not. I was like, you're going to open this door. Which, and again, hindsight that probably wasn't the best idea. But I was like, I don't want to be trying to drink 3/4 of my fluids in the return trip in the headwind, and like, I want to get settled. Like I want to stick to my plan. From a fluid standpoint, I don't want to keep riding without getting any calories, and you shouldn't get farther behind the 8 ball. So I think hindsight probably is to troubleshoot with water. But I mean, it is what it is. Frustrating again. Like a lot of our athletes and people I know, said they were worried because Ironman Tracker is, stops tracking, but I was safe. I was fine. I'm fine. Like I feel fine, frustrated, but I feel fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
All right. Well,
everything's fine.
Good.
Yeah, back to live to fight another day. But the return trip, I think for most athletes was hard. I think you saw that on the run. Like I got, after I kind of got my wits about me, I changed and went back on the run course to watch our athletes compete. You saw and that was the thing about the race. Like they got people in the water quickly, but I think it took people so long on the return trip that the longer it took, obviously the hotter the day got. And it was like you hopped off the bike and you saw this, like when I got back to kind of like in the run zone, no wind, like bye. We don't need a breeze. Like you're going to just sit here in the surface of the sun and there's no shade on that course. But people it was a slower day. I think it was probably, in my opinion, 13 to 17 minutes slower than a normal Texas 70.3 race. If you look at the results based year to year to year, the bike I know was slower for almost all athletes. I'll tell you, it was a tough day for people. And if you finished that race and you made it, like, give yourself a pound on the back. 'Cause everybody I talked to said that was tough. Like that was a really tough. I think it was a little bit more of a rust buster than I think people thought. Right. And I want to say this: it was also very, 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 very apparent that we haven't raced in a long time. Like I heard, and I wasn't past that much on the bike, but I didn't hear a single solitary person on your left, not one. That drives me insane. You say on your left, like no matter who you are or where you're going, you say on your left mic. I didn't hear it once. I know other people the same thing. Like, I think we have to get back into like, we're racing with other people mode. Like we're not doing the virtual thing anymore. We're not on, like we're racing with other people. And like, if you want to take, I saw on the way back in after I had dropped, I saw a couple of just gnarly 2-3 person bike crashes. Like not happen, but you could see they're on the side of the road, like, bloodied up and whatever. Like, it was obvious that people hadn't ridden and been around other people for a long period of time. People complain about the roads being whatever. I thought they were fine. Like, they're not like, and to Ironman's credit, they did, and this was one of the more enlightening things that I think you and I learned when we interviewed Ken Hammond, who does Ohio 70.3 Muslim. He was like, we go out the night before and sweep. Like, they sweep the roads. Yeah, there were some uneven asphalts, but they had huge signs, like fold-out signs that were like, rough road ahead, bump. Like, you knew they were coming. There were no surprises. Everything that was a pothole or a divot, red paint. Like, if you ended up in one, it was probably because you did the same thing that I did in the swim. You kind of got lazy with your thought, and you just kind of end up in one. Your head down, staring at your miles per hour, like, oh, I'm crushing it, going 30, bam. It's like, and that's when it's ball game over. So I thought they did an awesome job. I think the run course is jam packed for sure. For a 3-loop run with 2,000 people, is crowded. Lots of U-turns. But I think overall, like you saw, I know the men's race ended up being really, really close. But again, as you see in almost every race, bike for show, run for dough.
How close was it? Lionel won, or the men's race?
I think by like 10 or 15 seconds.
Damn.
Yeah, I think he beat Sam Long or Ben Canute by a very small margin. I think that was the podium.
Yeah, Ben. Sam, yeah.
It was a very, very awesome. I will say,
such a great feeling it's got to be at the end of those races, just holding someone off.
Yeah,
like that.
And I say, like, and I think that's some of the flack that Ironman will get too, is like they didn't really highlight the the pro race a lot. There wasn't any televised coverage. I think that's unfortunate, but they're just trying to make money. Like, they care about pros, but they give pros money, right? They care about the people that give them money, which is the age groupers. So I'm excited to see how they slot at the pro race. You and I were talking about this before we went live. Is how are they gonna? What races are they gonna have pro races at now? And I think you can actually find that on the Ironman website, what pro races they're gonna have and what prize purses they're gonna have. Chattanooga is almost always a pro race because of the course, the time of year. So I imagine that will be. I know a big full distance pro race is going to be Ironman Tulsa, I think, as well. But it was fun to see, that many pros and that kind of level pros. Like, there were some like Lionel, Ben Canute, Sam Long, Matt Hansen, like, Joe Skipper, like those are some real, Heather Jackson, Sky Mancha, that's what I love about the sport. Like, as much as people think like, like they don't do a great job. Like, it's one of the very few, road running is the same. Ultra's like, it's one of the very few sports where you can compete with professionals on the same day at the same time on the same course, right? It's not like you go to the YMCA gym and can play ball with LeBron and Kobe. It's like, oh, we're playing on the same court. We're here. It's neat to know that you're tackling the same thing on the same day at the same time that these professionals are, and then just to kind of see them in action and just how like next level they are. It's really kind of humbling to watch and see. But it was, and I post this in our active athlete closed group page. When I checked my bike in on Saturday, you and I were, discussing, and we were just really curious to see how many people were actually going to be at this event. I know Bibbs went up to like 2,500. I think I need to go back and look and see how many people actually started the race. I think it was probably close to 2,000. It was way more than I thought. I was thinking like 1,000, 1,200, something like that. Walking up and looking at like a sea of bikes, I got emotional. I was like, it was kind of almost like the very end of like I'll believe it when I see it, kind of feeling. And then to walk in and see that many bikes was just incredible. Like, and I took a stroll down memory lane of like the last year and a half of doing this podcast, and, coming in the middle of of lockdowns, and you and I sitting in the hub and doing the podcast where no races are in sight and nobody's doing anything and nobody's participating, and everybody thinks it's going to be like this is the new normal, and like we're never going to race again, and it's almost kind of like, and all of a sudden it's here. It's like we have these like, we think these things and we feel these things and believe certain things, and then we never accept them until it's kind of like, okay, the tracker's loaded, big deal, still could get canceled. Like, because everybody kind of had that uppercut this last year, and it wasn't until I checked my bike in I was like, holy shit, this is happening. Like, we are back. Like, you can say that, you and I have been pretty optimistic, pretty much, overly optimistic, I think, but I had a feeling this race was 100%, and I think they're all going to be on from here on out. But it was just refreshing to see that many people still involved in the sport on that day. Which think about it, like, the very first race of 2021, where plenty of people thought it was going to get canceled. Where the other big race, Ironman Texas, was supposed to happen 2 weeks after that and got canceled for whatever reason. It really put a damper on people and probably made them doubt that the race was going to happen, and it was just kind of like it's kind of like those overnight successes. You kind of like, this kind of came out of nowhere. Like it felt like it came out of nowhere, and here we are again. Answering questions this morning about a Florida 70.3 that's happening this weekend. Like it's back, and I think it's exciting and refreshing, and just kind of hope you can all get excited about tracking your friends and tracking strangers. About. It's just fun to get back to the tracker, like, to see people and cheer for them and, be around, supporting them. And then just now you can actually start visualizing, when you're training, like what's going to be like for me on race day, like it's like not just like a myth or like you're just being naive or I hope it's going to happen. It's you're going to race. It's exciting. It was a very special weekend, I think. To kick off the year. And I was, although my personal race went, into the gutter, I was very, very, very happy to just be there and be a part of it and to see our athletes not just finish, but just be incredibly successful and be happy, when they finished and like overcoming, that's one of my favorite things as a coach. Like when you see athletes finish a race, like, I don't like, yes, do I care what their time is? Sure, because I know what their goal is for their time. Like I care because I know what kind of range that time puts them in their happy, right. place. Yeah. But you're the same way. Like I just want our athletes to be happy. Like, like that's why we do this, is we want them to be happy. I don't care if they average 23.5 miles an hour or they run 6:10s. If it doesn't fall into the category of it makes you happy, then I don't give a shit. Like, it just doesn't matter. And so to see athletes be done and racing has always been like this when you coach, is like when you see someone cross the finish line or you see them on the run course, you see them. And then you also kind of see like, like VH1 used to have like the pop-up videos where like when you see your athletes racing, like when I see like all the pop-ups of like all the obstacles that they've overcome and like how the last year and a half has gone with everyone in some way, shape or form. And to see them there at the start line, in the water, on the bike, on the run course, crossing the finish line, is kind of putting like a big, like, it felt like a big middle finger, right? To like just the last year and a half that was like, you tried to get me down, you tried to hold me down, yet here I am. And I'm doing my deal. And not only am I doing it, but I'm faster than when it happened, so to see athletes improve on that scale and to overcome things, it was a special day. It was just really exciting and fun to watch as a coach to be there and to see athletes just be happy, and then you look back and think of how hard people have worked not for nothing, but like to not be able to show there's something. To see people go out there and see it, people were just smiling. It was probably one of the more positive race experiences I've ever been around. You didn't hear a lot of the whining and the complaining that you usually hear at triathlons, because that, triathletes love to whine. It had a very grateful atmosphere, like, in terms of just being happy to be there. And I'm sure that'll dwindle away, as like, as the races go. I'm sure it's gone now. Florida 7.3 be a freaking complaint fest. But it was just fun, and I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to do it and be a part of it for the rest of the year.
That sounds cool. Yeah, it sounds like it was a unique experience because of that, and how the more you race, the more you just kind of start taking things for granted. So hopefully this can recharge that feeling of being grateful to be out there and everything like that. I'm sure that was pre-race. There was a little bit of almost, there's always going to be some anxiety, but maybe even a little bit of a different anxiety. It's sort of like, wow, man, this feels a little bit foreign or unusual. And then as the race unfolded, I would imagine, people started getting that feeling back, like, oh, this is what it felt like, because you always talk about it, but you can train and, you can do your intervals and things like that. But that race feeling is kind of, unique for most people, because it just, it hits you hard and it becomes very difficult. And you've got that one day to kind of shine out and show out, and you suck it up and you dig deeper than you normally do. And I think a lot of times that's actually the experience, the good experience, because, we have so much in us, and that race kind of tests us, and it sort of like makes you see what you got. And then it kind of gives you that jolt in the arm. Is like, wow, I'm capable of more than I thought I was. And, because every situation, depending on if it was your best race or your hardest race or whatever the case was, you have to overcome something during the race that's difficult like that. And I think it had to be a cool feeling for a lot of people. And
I was super nervous.
Yeah.
Like I haven't been that nervous. I think it was like 33 months since my last one. Like I had a much longer layoff than even everybody else did, I think.
I saw a video of you walking up and just a quick one.
Oh, really?
And swim start, yeah.
From who?
He sent that William Butler.
Oh, William Butler. Yeah, he said, yeah.
He sent a video of me, and I could see your hand shaking.
My hand shaking?
Nerves, man.
That's I was gonna say.
It's like a 2-second video.
Once I got my wetsuit on, I was ready to roll. But in transition, I was nervous. I was like, what the hell do I do right now? Like I was antsy. Like I was just. It was a weird. It had been a while. I did not sleep well the night before.
Oh, good. I get jealous of people who sleep.
No. The nights before that, I slept like a champion. But the night before, did not sleep.
I would imagine most people didn't sleep that well. But before we move on, I wanted to jump in with the pro talk. And we are having Chattanooga 70.3 here. And if any pros are racing, we don't know that. We didn't look that up yet. But we'll
look that up.
If you are racing, get a hold of us, because we're going to have some shindigs here at the hub, and would love to have you by.
Yeah, come on out and see us.
Yeah. Hit me up, crushingiron@gmail.com. And
hit me up.
Hit me up.
Hit him on his hip, baby.
No, but we'd love to have you by. I don't know. We can figure something out. If you just want to hang, that's cool too.
Come by and see us. We'll put something out there. We'll find you. I think I would have to imagine there's probably going to be some pros, but that's it. I mean, the race is here. We'll talk more about it on Thursday, but get excited, be optimistic, when you get out and train, don't think it's just for nothing or it's going to get canceled again. Like canceled races are there. I'm sure there will be some, but they are going to be the minority instead of the majority for the rest of the year. Races are going to tick off, and the more the races that happen, the higher likelihood that the next one's going to happen, and the next one's going to happen. I think it's going to be, kind of a snowball effect. So get excited and be positive. And if you have the opportunity and you get to a race and you're not participating, volunteer. Be a volunteer. Help them out, because I think that's where the area that Ironman is going to be hit the hardest in is volunteers. Be a volunteer. Be a part of it. Help out, because you're.
They have them on their aid stations.
Yeah.
Okay, they're handing out cups. And stuff. Oh, good.
Be a part of the solution. Not part of the problem. Just help things out and just get excited. Things are coming. It's back. It's back, baby. It's back.
All right. Well, we're back. We were a day late, hopefully not $1 short on this podcast.
We fully delivered $1.02. 2 cents over. That means we're going to give you 98 cents on Thursday. But as always, we love you. We appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. We know it's valuable, and for your patience this week on Monday, and just in general. We hope to see you in person, live, and in color at races this year. If you're coming to Chattanooga, I might talk about pros. We'll put out kind of a list of events we'll have here. Our training center, our hub is here in Chattanooga. We will be blowing it out. We'll probably have 40, 50 athletes racing and family and friends. And we will welcome you with open arms to our home in our hometown. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't been or it's been a while, swing on by our website, because I'll tell you, we've had a couple this last week. Like racing is back. So if you've been on the edge being like, I don't really know if I need any help this year. Races probably aren't going to happen. They're happening. And we still have our club membership going on, which is an awesome opportunity, especially if you have a lot of races and you're really not looking to go into the fully coached program, but just kind of want some general guidance and a lot of support and be a part of an awesome community. That club program, again, our website, c26triathlon.com. Coaching camps and communities, all the info is there. Click on the coaching tab, scroll down 3, and hit on the club membership. Mike's setting that up. We have a wide number of, I think we have 5 coaches listed now that can help you. But check them out. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, you can email Mike. He's at crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you have any specific questions for me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
Yes. And we also have some gear at the website, so check that out. C26 gear if you want to check that. And if you know anybody racing Chat 70.3 that may not be turned on to this podcast yet, it might be a good time to get them involved, because we're going to be going hard on that probably for at least, I don't know, mile by mile breakdown of the course.
That'd be foot by foot.
Live. I don't know. Who knows what we're going to do, but we're going to certainly be talking about that, because that's our host. We're in the host city, and
hometown.
That's where we're at. We've got the hub, and I know we keep talking about the hub, and a lot of people come here and they're like, wow, I didn't have any idea it was this big or this cool. So, just, put that out there, and we have hub experiences and things like that. So you can check that out at the website as well. Anything else, buddy?
Nice close.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're terrible at marketing.
I know we are.
But
right.
That's
we'll
unmarketing.
We are unmarketing marketers.
Tricky backdoor stuff. All right. Well, it's been great to have you back, man.
Thanks, dude.
I will see you in 2 seconds.
All right. See you, dude. Bye.